How's it going, guys? This is our fourth week of Going the Distance. This week's topic, though, is going to be just a little bit different. So far in the weeks prior, we have talked about enduring through suffering, how to live a life that can handle suffering, and then last week we talked about emotional suffering and how to endure that. This week, though, we're going to look at that point when we realize that we are at the end of or even past our own strength, right? How do we endure when we have run out of gas, so to speak? You guys know I read a lot. I try to find a balance between fiction and nonfiction. And when it comes to nonfiction, my favorite books always seem to end up being books about war and warriors. I don't know why. I especially love the time frame of World War II. Many of the books I've read are biographies of soldiers, and they explain through the course of the book, in a small way, a declassified way, kind of a version of what they endure in training. And one thing that really stands out as a common theme is how those soldiers are pushed past their own ability. I read a book about a SEAL team member who shares that when they were doing pool training to figure out how well the guys swim and improve on that, they actually have rescue divers on hand because they wanted to push the trainees to the point of drowning. And then they needed to be rescued so that those warriors or future warriors would know how far their limit really is. I know it sounds crazy, but other branches have their own versions of survival training and survival tests to help their soldiers realize that they have way more inside of them than they realize. Guys, I've never served in the armed forces, but I've had a time in my life when I was pushed right up to my limit emotionally and physically. And I'm going to share that with you guys super quick before we look at how to endure when we're out of our element. Now, when I was in Scouts, I achieved my Eagle rank, which is the highest rank in Scouts. And I had a deal with my grandfather early on when I first started that if I got my Eagle, he would send me to Philmont. If you don't know what Philmont is, it's one of the high adventure camps through Scouts. It's actually in New Mexico, and it's a hike camp. And it was an amazing opportunity. Not a lot of Scouts get to hike Philmont. I was part of a team of total strangers, though. I literally met them like 3 times before getting on the plane to fly out west. So we spent 2 days in the base camp getting acclimated to the area, and then we took off on the trail for 10 days out in the wilderness. We'd carry everything on our backs, including our drinking water, our food. It would actually be airdropped at some location, and we'd have to navigate there using maps and coordinates to get our food every now and then. Guys, I can tell you all kinds of stories from those 10 days. It stayed so fresh in my mind, but it wasn't all beautiful scenery and great walks. We were averaging 10 to 12 miles a day, and I was carrying extra weight in my pack for some of my crew members whose backpacks were too small. And since I didn't know anyone else on the crew, I was assigned a random teammate. So that's why I'm in the tent today. Instead of using the tents that Philmont provided, my tent mate wanted to use his own tent. Little did I know, his tent didn't repel water. I spent most of my nights curled up in my sleeping bag that was then curled up inside of a waterproof tarp that I had the foresight to pack for myself. One of our adults in the crew had a blister so big at the bottom of it covered the entire bottom of his foot, and it made the trek nearly impossible for him. And then we had to carry his backpack on our fronts the whole time with our backpacks behind us. Being out in the wilderness and being so far from my parents, man, it pushed me right to the edge physically and emotionally. But in that time, I was able to see some amazing things, and I found out some amazing things about myself. I found out that I was able to carry that weight for an extended mileage and maintain healthy feet, which is a big deal. I adapted to the dehydrated food and then was able to stay hydrated even with the crazy temperature swings that we found in New Mexico. I would jump at the chance to go back to Philmont today, even knowing all the tests that I would face as a 42-year-old trying to keep pace. I loved the entire experience. I loved how it showed me a strength within that I didn't know that was there. Typically, in anything that gets hard for us, guys, we hold back a little from really giving it all that we have, right? We save a little effort to get us home so that we cut off just when we're about to break through that middle barrier. How far is the gap between our perceived max effort and what we're really capable of? Most of us don't know. Thankfully, God does, and He helps us with that. It's up to us to test that and then go the distance when we're at that limit of our own strength. Guys, tonight we're going to look at the book of Judges, chapter 7. Go ahead and turn there. We're going to revisit a person that we read about in our Fear series a few weeks ago. This is the story of Gideon. We're going to pick that up. If you remember, from that night we talked about Gideon's fear. He was actually hiding in a wine press from an enemy country when God called him to do something pretty massive. Gideon tried to talk his way out of it, but God just wasn't having it. It wasn't going to happen. So Gideon stepped up, and that's where we pick up our story today. Chapter 7, verses 2 through 8. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, 'My own hand has saved me.' Now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. Then 22,000 of the people returned, and only 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. And any one of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, shall go with you. And any of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water. And the Lord said to Gideon, everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set by himself. Likewise, everyone who kneels down to drink. And the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouths, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people knelt down to drink water. And the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men who have lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hand. And let all the others go, every man to his home. So the people took their provisions in their hands and their trumpets. And he sent all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Now, think for a second. God took Gideon's army from 32,000, great size, right, down to just 10,000 by asking anyone that was scared to leave. And then God said, that's still too many. So he cut the number down from 10,000 to just 300 by giving the men a test. Why in the world did God want Gideon going into this battle with so few men? It was an absolute perfect recipe for disaster. Well, God didn't want Israel to say that we won this battle with our strength. So he took the numbers down to such a ridiculous ratio that the only way the battle was going to be won was with God's help. The 300-man army of Gideon would be quickly overwhelmed if God hadn't been in the battle with him. If you keep reading Gideon's story, before even leaving chapter 7, God hands the Midianites over to Israel. They were out of their own strength, which made them rely on the one whose strength knows no end. God will sometimes let us come to the end of our strength or our ability, so that when he does something amazing, we can't take credit for it. That might be where you're at right now. God could have you at the end of your ability so that he could do something amazing through you, and you will have no other choice but to give him all the praise for it. What is it that has you at your limit? It could be something physical, like a time that you're trying to beat or a skill that you're trying to learn. It could be a goal that you're trying to hit that seems more and more distant as each day passes. It could also be a challenge to our emotional strength as well, right? I didn't physically mind being damp when we were in Philmont, right? That struggle was more mental than anything. Going to sleep wet didn't keep me from sleeping. It just messed with my head and then ultimately my enthusiasm for the next day. Emotional challenges can come in the way of moves, either to another city or to another school. It can come in the way of a split family, perhaps a relationship that ends, or a friendship that ends, or even the loss of a loved one. All of those situations have the potential to push you to or past what you think you can handle. But the beautiful part for us, just like we saw in Judges 7, is that point is where God shows up and his power takes over. God knows what you can handle, and even when you feel like he has asked too much of you, he is there to catch you and sustain you in his power when yours fails. So short of just going to where we feel totally out of our element and then freaking out, how can we find a way to endure when our strength has run out? Guys, I think this answer is pretty similar to how we overcame our emotional suffering last week. When we face those times where our strength just isn't enough, we have to widen our circle. Think back to Gideon for a second, right? He started with 32,000 men, which was a great force, a great army, and he beat the Midianites with only 300. This sounds like such a small number from where we started, right? But 300 people is still a big force, especially when God is the one leading the fight. You don't have to find 32,000 or even 300 people to battle with you, but a few solid friends will go a long way in helping you endure when your strength is gone. Also, praying to God, who is the source of our strength and our victory. Deuteronomy 24 says this, "For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory." Guys, I can't explain enough how exciting it is to be pushed past your boundary. I hope you guys have had some opportunities in your life, and if not, I hope God gives you some opportunities to be pushed out of your own strength and into complete and total trust in him. Those are some amazing times, and God will do some amazing things in your lives. So guys, just like here, I have made the decision to have my own tent going forward. and will not rely on someone else's busted tent. I trust that you rely on your own faith. Firm that thing up. Make sure that it is strong. Make sure that it can hold up to the storms that God will help you through. I hope you guys have a great week. Can't wait to see you very soon. Look forward to some awesome plans for the summer. Take care, guys.